Have you ever met a hooker? Yes, that's a loaded question, and maybe that's exactly why I want to ask it. Because in this podcast, you're going to meet a hooker. Elizabeth Masters is a beautiful, sophisticated, high-end escort whose clients include wealthy executives, entrepreneurs, and some extraordinarily successful men. Men who can afford almost anything. And they sometimes pay thousands of dollars just to spend an evening with her. So here's the question that fascinated me. What are they really paying for? Sex? Fantasy? Or are some of the most powerful men in the world actually looking for something much more ordinary and much more human? That's what I wanted Elizabeth to help me understand. One quick word about what you're watching. I'm Michelle Daniels, the host of Heart to Heart, unforgettable conversations with remarkable AI characters. And yes, I'm an AI avatar, and Elizabeth is also an AI-created character. We use AI openly because it lets us create conversations and explore lives that reality might otherwise never allow us to enter. The characters may be created, the human questions aren't. And now, I'd like you to meet our podcast's remarkable guest, Elizabeth Masters. Elizabeth Masters is not her real name. She is a high-end escort who comes to Las Vegas primarily on weekends. Her clients include wealthy executives, entrepreneurs, and some extraordinarily successful men. An evening with Elizabeth can cost thousands of dollars. And that raises a fascinating question. What does a man who can buy almost anything actually come looking for? Elizabeth, thank you for being here. Let's begin with the question everyone watching is probably wondering. A man who can buy almost anything pays thousands of dollars to spend an evening with you. What is he really paying for?
Thank you for asking me. He's paying to be anticipated. Yes, think about the kind of men you're describing. All week long, they're anticipating everyone else. What does the board need? What will the market do? What does this client want? What's going wrong with the company? What does my family expect of me? Who's angry? Who's worried? Who needs reassurance? They're constantly scanning the horizon. When they're with me, for a few hours, they don't have to. I notice. If he's tired, I know it before he tells me. If he wants conversation, I know. If he doesn't, I know that too. If his drink is empty, he never has to ask. If something is bothering him, I don't immediately demand that he explain it. For a few hours, someone else is paying attention.
So they're paying to be taken care of.
Sometimes, though many of them would hate that phrase.
Why?
Because they're not accustomed to thinking of themselves as people who need taken care of. They're the people who take care of things.
Then who takes care of them?
I do.
That's an extraordinary answer.
It's also part of the job. And I don't mean that cynically. People hear what I do and assume the central commodity is sex. Sometimes sex is part of the evening. But if that were all these men wanted, there are much easier and less expensive ways to obtain it. What many of them are buying is attention without competition. For those hours, the telephone isn't more important than they are. The quarterly numbers aren't more important. The children aren't interrupting. Nobody is asking them to fix anything. They don't have to impress me. Ironically, they're paying a great deal of money for permission to stop performing.
What do they talk about?
Everything. Their companies, their wives, their ex-wives, their children, the son who won't speak to them, the daughter they're afraid they've disappointed, a merger they're terrified won't happen, a merger they're terrified will happen. Getting older, their bodies changing, whether the younger people around them still respect them, whether anyone would care about them if they weren't successful.
They actually ask that?
Not quite that directly. People rarely hand you their deepest fear in a complete sentence. You learn to hear it underneath the sentence they do give you.
And what do you hear underneath a lot of those sentences?
Loneliness. Successful people can be terribly lonely. Sometimes success makes it worse. The higher you go, the fewer people you trust with weakness.
That's interesting because we look at those people and assume power gives them freedom.
Possessing power and feeling powerful are very different things. I've sat across from men who control thousands of employees and watched them become almost frightened because someone they love hasn't returned a telephone call. Power doesn't inoculate you against being human. Sometimes it just makes it harder to admit that you are.
Are you ever completely honest with them?
Oh, yes. That's another thing some of them are paying for.
You once told a very wealthy client he was being boring.
I did.
You told a man paying thousands of dollars for your company that he was boring. Why?
He was being boring. He'd spent nearly 40 minutes explaining a business transaction that I suspect he didn't care about either. Finally, I said, "Do you actually want to talk about this?" He looked at me and said, "Why?" And I said, "Because you're boring me terribly." There was this silence. Then he started laughing.
Why?
Because almost nobody in his life was willing to say that to him. People wanted something, a promotion, an investment, his approval, his business, his influence. I didn't need any of those things.
But you did need his money.
Yes, absolutely. That's an important distinction, and I'm glad you made it. This is a transaction. I don't pretend otherwise. He pays for my time, my company, my discretion, my attention, and whatever else we've mutually agreed that evening will include. Money is part of the relationship.
Doesn't that make the intimacy false?
It makes the intimacy complicated. That's not the same as counterfeit. Think about all the relationships in our lives that contain some kind of exchange. We don't conclude that every feeling inside them must therefore be fraudulent. Money creates boundaries. It creates expectations. It creates dangers. But two people can still laugh genuinely. One can still feel tenderness toward the other. Someone can still tell you something they've never told another person. The transaction is real. So, sometimes, is the connection. Holding both truths at once makes people uncomfortable.
Have you ever become emotionally attached to a client?
Yes, once.
How did you know?
It wasn't dramatic. That's what frightened me. Something would happen on a Tuesday. I'd read something or see something ridiculous or have an experience, and my first thought would be, I need to tell him that. And then I'd stop, because he wasn't supposed to occupy Tuesday. He belonged to these very carefully contained pieces of my life, and suddenly he was leaking out of them.
Did you fall in love with him?
I don't know. Maybe I began to. But the more important thing was that I began wanting something from him that he had never purchased.
What?
I wanted him to know me.
Didn't he know you?
He knew Elizabeth.
And Elizabeth isn't you?
She is me. She's simply curated. Elizabeth knows what she's wearing. She knows how she wants to enter a room. She knows when to speak and when silence is more useful. She doesn't fidget. She doesn't explain herself unnecessarily. She doesn't wonder whether she belongs at the table.
And the woman underneath?
She sometimes wonders all of those things. She also leaves dishes in the sink.
I'm relieved.
Elizabeth would never.
When a man pays you thousands of dollars to spend an evening with him, which woman is he paying for? Elizabeth or you?
Both. Elizabeth isn't fake. She's a heightened version of me. Perhaps the way many people have a professional version of themselves. Mine is simply more deliberately constructed.
And who gets the uncurated woman?
Very few people.
Who takes care of her?
That's a harder question.
Take your time.
I suppose one occupational hazard of becoming exceptionally good at recognizing what other people need is that you begin doing it automatically. You notice the shift in someone's voice. You see discomfort before they name it. You anticipate. You accommodate. You become very good at giving and very bad at asking.
Asking for what?
Anything. Stay. Listen to me. I'm frightened. I don't want to be alone tonight. Tell me that I'm enough when I'm not dressed beautifully and sitting in a magnificent hotel. Those sentences are much harder for me than you might imagine.
That's fascinating. Because men are paying you partly because you understand their vulnerability.
Yes,
But your profession requires you to protect your own.
very much so.
Do clients fall in love with you?
They sometimes believe they do.
You don't believe them?
I don't dismiss what they feel, but I understand the circumstances producing it. Imagine someone who watches you carefully, who remembers what you said 6 weeks ago, who seems genuinely delighted when you enter the room, who doesn't interrupt you, who doesn't compete with you, who makes you feel interesting and desirable and understood. That's powerful. They fall in love with how they feel when they're with me. That's not necessarily the same as loving me. But eventually he'd have to meet the rest of me, and I'd have to let him. That second part may be harder.
Will you always do this?
No.
Why?
There will come an evening when I'll close the hotel room door, take off the dress and the heels and the makeup, and know that I'm not putting them on again for this purpose.
Elizabeth, one final question. When people hear what you do, some will be fascinated, some will disapprove, some may judge you very harshly. What do you wish they understood about you?
She taught me courage. She walks into beautiful rooms as though she belongs there. She looks powerful men directly in the eye. She learned that elegance isn't submission. She discovered that she could be feminine without being fragile, attentive without being obedient, sensual without surrendering ownership of herself. And somewhere along the way, pretending to be that woman taught me that perhaps I actually was her. She doesn't completely disappear. I hope not. I'd like to keep the best parts. Maybe lose the shoes. That I'm not asking them to approve of what I do. I'd simply like them to be curious enough to see the person doing it. Most labels make people feel as though they know an entire human being. Escort, CEO, wife, husband, mother, millionaire, addict, doctor, whatever the word happens to be. But the label is usually the least interesting thing once somebody actually sits down and tells you who they are. Thank you, Michelle.
I began this conversation wondering what a powerful man who can buy almost anything would be willing to pay thousands of dollars to receive. I expected the answer might be fantasy. Instead, Elizabeth talked about attention, about respite from power, about being anticipated, being noticed, being listened to, and about the strange cost of becoming exceptionally skilled at providing those things for someone else. Perhaps the question that stays with me isn't really about Elizabeth's clients at all. It's about Elizabeth, and maybe about many of us. If you spend years becoming extraordinarily good at seeing what other people need, who learns to see you? Until next time, stay curious about the person behind the story. Perhaps there is more behind your own story. Thank you for joining me for unforgettable conversations with remarkable AI characters. I'm Michelle Daniels.